What's for dinner? Hey everyone, I'm Chef Z and welcome back to Chef Z Cooks. Today I'm going to be sharing my absolute favorite bread pudding recipe. Now, do not confuse this with Pudin de Pan because yes, it's the same thing, but I'm going to be making this New Orleans style because listen, New Orleans has forever ruined bread pudding for me, but in a really good way. When I visited New Orleans and I had the New Orleans style bread pudding, I instantly fell in love. And lucky for you, I'm also going to be showing you how to make the bourbon sauce for this. Now you can use rum if you want, but I'm actually raiding my boyfriend's bourbon stash.
Wait, what?
I'm actually raiding my boyfriend's bourbon stash.
You betrayer!
So we're making bourbon sauce today as well. If you like to learn how to make this amazing bread pudding, then go ahead and keep watching. Today I'm going to show you how to make one of my favorite desserts, and I love that you can use some leftover stale bread to make this. I'm also going to show you how to make the bourbon sauce, but keep in mind there are so many ingredients in this recipe that are totally optional. We're going to start off by melting the butter, and as soon as that butter is melted, go ahead and take it off the heat. You can do this in the microwave as well. We're now going to move on and we're going to toast the almonds. Now we're only going to toast them until they become a very light golden brown color, which should take about a minute or two. And as soon as they're toasted, we're going to go ahead and take that off the flame as well. Now we're going to move on and we're actually going to soak our raisins in some bourbon, which again is optional. You don't have to include any alcohol in this recipe if you don't want to. We're now going to move on and start making our custard. So we're going to add some eggs, some sugar, and some vanilla bean paste, but you can definitely use some vanilla extract if that's what you have on hand. We're also going to add some almond extract, which is also optional. We're going to add some ground cloves, some ground nutmegs, and some ground cinnamon, and we're going to whisk that together until it's well combined. And once you finish whisking together the egg, sugar, and spices, we're now going to add the melted butter, which has had a chance to cool down. And I always like to add the butter while whisking because butter is a fat, so if you don't whisk it while adding, the batter does tend to separate a little bit. We're now going to go ahead and we're going to add the evaporated milk while whisking. Again, because there's butter in the batter, it tends to not play well together, so it's always best to whisk while mixing. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our cream, but it's totally up to you. You can use regular milk or half and half if that's what you have on hand. Now that we've created our awesome custard, we're now going to add the bread and we're going to let the bread soak in that custard for at least 1 to 2 hours. But before we do that, you want to very gently fold the bread into the custard. Now this is optional. I like to be really gentle because I like to make sure that those cubes stay intact. Now once that bread has had a chance to soak in that custard for about 1 to 2 hours, we're now going to actually put it into the baking dish. Now I know it's kind of hard to see because my baking dish is white, but I did go ahead and rub my baking dish with butter. So now we're going to kind of build a bread pudding lasagna. We're going to add that bourbon soaked raisins, being sure to leave behind some of that bourbon, and again, the bourbon is totally optional. And now we're also going to add the toasted almonds, which is also optional. I like to add some toasted almonds just because it gives the bread pudding some awesome flavor and texture. So once we've built the first layer, we're going to go ahead and repeat this step and we're going to build a second layer. Now I like to do this in layers because if we were to put the toasted almonds and the raisins into the custard with the bread while it's soaking, I find that the raisins just stay at the bottom and it's not evenly distributed amongst your bread pudding. Now, if a little bit of bourbon goes into the bread pudding, no worries, that's totally fine. It's just gonna give it a little bit of spice and a little bit extra oomph. Now, for the very top layer of your bread pudding, you want to be fairly strategic because this is going to be part of the star of the show, because I don't know about you guys, but when it comes to bread pudding, I personally love the little crispy top that you get. So I pour a little bit of the custard that's left over, and then I go in with the back of my spatula and I press it down really gently, because what's going to happen is that as the bread soaks up, the custard is going to rise. You want to make sure to push it down and down and down, just so that those top pieces aren't too dry. So again, with the leftover custard, we're just going to go ahead and pour it over top and just very gently pat it down once again, because listen, we don't want a dry bread pudding. We're now going to place it into the oven, and we're going to bake it at 350 degrees uncovered. And about every 10 to 15 minutes, at least in the beginning while it's baking, you do want to go in and check on it, and you also want to push it down, because again, like I mentioned before, the bread does have a tendency to rise up as it's soaking up that custard mixture, but you want to press it back down into the custard before it has set, just so that those top pieces aren't too dry. And after about 45 to 50 minutes, we're going to go in and we're going to check if our bread pudding is done by inserting a keg tester and making sure that it comes out clean. Now your bread pudding should have this beautiful golden brown color throughout, and note that your cooking time will vary depending on how big and how deep your baking dish is. Now, when you take the bread pudding out, it should have a little bit of spring back and a little bit of give, just like you see here, and you want to set it off to the side while it cools and set. We're now going to make our bourbon sauce. So with the flame off, we're going to whisk together just one egg, and to that we're going to add some sugar, some vanilla bean paste, but just like the custard, if you have vanilla extract, that will also do. And we're going to add some half and half or some heavy cream, whatever you have at home, and we're going to whisk that together until it's well combined. And once all of those ingredients have been mixed together, we're now going to turn on the flame, and we want to be really careful not to scramble the eggs. So what we're going to do is we're always going to be whisking as our sauce begins to thicken. And you know when your sauce is done, when you can go in with the spoon, flip it over, put your finger through it, and it holds its shape. Now the sauce is actually ready right here, right now, if you didn't want to add any bourbon. But if you did want to add some bourbon, turn the flame off, and then you can add as much or as little bourbon as you like. Quick tip, if you feel like you've added too much bourbon or you don't like the bite of the alcohol, just turn the flame again on low and cook out the alcohol vapors. So there you guys have it, my recipe for some bread pudding with bourbon sauce, which by the way tastes so good when you have it the next day. If you have any questions, visit my website, and until next time, I'm Chef Z y Buen Provecho. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Now be sure to join the Chef Z family and subscribe to my channel and click that bell so that you don't miss out each and every single time I post an all new video. And listen guys, I have so many yummy recipes already here on my channel. So if you need a little inspiration, you want to switch things up, go ahead and click right here.